I've done it and I've never done well at it, which is fine. It's either it's not my clientele or it's not what people want to see over there. I don't know, but I have accepted that. And I think other people are like, well, why can't I make it work over here? It's just like, it's not your thing, boo boo. It's okay.
Yeah.
You're winter and you're trying to wear fall colors. Like, I don't know. It's okay.
Hey everyone, welcome to the S.O.B Marketing Podcast, where we celebrate the S.O.B that you are, and if you haven't figured it out yet, we mean small-owned business. We don't mean S.O.B.
Listen, we know that as a small business owner, you are working hard on the daily to keep your business fully operational while trying to promote it. And while some days it may feel like the business is owning you, if we're being honest with each other, I bet you would admit that you wouldn't give up the insanity for anything.
Our commitment here at the S.O.B Marketing Podcast is to give you the real talk, what works when it comes to advertising, marketing, promoting your business, and then what doesn't really work.
And Chelsea and I promise to always keep the conversation real. Welcome back to another episode of the S.O.B Small Owned Business Marketing Podcast. I'm here with my beautiful sister, Chelsea, and we have a special guest, which I will let her introduce here in a second. But before we hop right into this week's content, let's go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping. So first and foremost, we want to say thank you so much. We actually were doing a drawing for an S.O.B t-shirt for any of you who left us a review, and we did get a winner. Thank you to Kristen from Soul Stitch. If you guys are looking for any custom t-shirt designs, you can find Kristen on Instagram. Her handle is at soulstitch_23. So Kristen, we're going to be reaching out to you, get your size and all of that, and ship you a shirt. Thank you once again for leaving us a review. You guys, if you are loving this free marketing content that we're putting out there, this is the one way that you can 100% help support us. Please leave us a review, share this podcast with other small business owners, because sharing is caring. And we want to be sure that we're bringing you guys relevant information to grow your business. So Chelsea, what do we got going on today?
Well, we have a really exciting episode for you guys today. I know that it is only September, but y'all, it is holiday season, okay? If you're anything like me, you started at the beginning of this month, okay? Most people, probably not that early, but they're definitely already starting to think about it. So it is the beginning of holiday season, which means we are about to get into holiday market season, which is my favorite. I'm so excited. I'm going to be so poor by the end of this year. But we want to talk today about how to go about, as a small business, how to go about finding a market that's actually worth your time, because not all markets are created equally, okay? So we have a very special guest for you guys today who knows her stuff when it comes to markets and events and all that kind of stuff. And you guys have heard her before if you've been listening to all the episodes of this podcast. It is Miss Ray from the Design Demon.
Yay!
Yay! And something really exciting that we want to say, Ray is now the sole owner of Feminist Magic Market. So if you are in the Low Country, Charleston area, and you're a part of the market scene, then you probably know about Feminist Magic Market. It is a wonderful market that, how many times a year do you guys host?
Four. Quarterly.
So
we
quarterly.
sprinkle in some things every once in a while, but
Mm-hmm.
4.
Well, I'm going to go ahead. Ray, could you actually describe and explain Feminist Magic Market, since it is now all you?
Oh, that's a little intense. No, of course I can. Feminist Magic Market, what started as a really small, like 20 vendor market, has grown to be about, on average, 90 vendors that we host. It's in the Park Circle neighborhood. In the space where we used to have the 20-person small market, is now a give back garden that we call it. And that's where we host nonprofit organizations within the community. So our goal is to always post equality, diversity, and just a bunch of different vendors throughout the Low Country and surrounding neighborhoods. So like Savannah, Columbia, people from North Carolina, all that stuff. But yeah, it's a quarterly community-driven market.
And for those of you that are listening, that perhaps you have either gone to, if you have participated, if you've been a vendor at the Feminist Magic Market and you're thinking, well, I know Ray's been around here for a while. You got involved back in 2022, right? Or was it beginning of 2023?
Yeah. At the very end of 2022 was like my training session, if you will. And then 2023 was when I started working with the previous runner. And then a month ago, a few weeks ago, I became the sole organizer. So it's been an eventful year and a half, 2 years.
Yes. Well, what I love about this, though, is because now Chelsea and I have gone a couple times. I know Chelsea does not skip a Feminist Magic Market to save her life, but as someone who's attending, as an attendee, it is so well run as far as, because we go to markets all the time, and I can tell you some of them seem like a little chaotic. Yours just kind of seems like it's something that people know what they're there to do. The community knows and expects it to be in that park circle location because it is such a nice walking area. There are parks nearby, there are restaurants nearby, enough parking for everyone, right? So I feel like it's one of those things where you are kind of like one of the top tier markets in the area that people look forward to going to.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a lot of time on the back end of like working out logistics as far as like I use Adobe Illustrator to plot out the map. And so if you're looking at it from like a bird's eye view, right, each square is a different color. And each color is representative of like a product category. And so I do my best to be like, okay, no candle vendors can be right here because we already have a candle vendor. They have to be certain space. So I do my best to kind of with the mind or keeping in mind kind of the vendor experience, but also the shopper experience. You're not going to want to see all of the candle vendors in the same space, And so I keep in mind foot traffic as far as like the experience of going booth to booth and kind of the vibe from person to person, as well as vendor, because you're not going to want to be a jewelry vendor right next to a jewelry vendor who's right across from a jewelry vendor, and literally no one wants that. So
let me tell you who knows that kind of stuff, though. Fellow vendors. Because I think when Chelsea introduced you earlier, Chelsea mentioned the Design Demon, which is your business, your jewelry business. And I know you said eventually you'll branch out and do a little more with that. But I think because you go to markets all the time, there's nobody better to be managing a market and setting stuff up, because you do take into consideration these little nuances where, like you said, you don't want 3 jewelry vendors, all lined up in a row. And as a attendee, I appreciate that. I love that these things just to give us a better experience. But Chelsea, what specifically do you want to ask Ray? Because I know you were saying our conversation today is going to be focused on how to go about finding markets, right?
Yeah. I think let's start with what makes a market run poorly. And I know that's a very loaded question, but Ray, if you could give us an example of something that maybe vendors might not consider a big deal, but really ends up having such a strong impact on your sales. Because let's face it, a well-planned market has a huge impact on your sales. And a market that's not planned well is going to also have a huge impact on your sales.
Yeah, I actually recently complained about, I won't say which one, but on my TikTok, I recently complained about a poorly ran market, and someone commented with a solid response saying like, a good market vendor is worth like every ounce of gold that you could ever think of. Like if they're not a good, market runner, That's what I meant.
Yeah.
If they're not good at running a market, then you're going to have a crappy day, or it's just not going to be as good as it could. But to answer your question, I understand that I have my own biases, and I know that I do things a certain way. So I need to like keep that in mind. But I thrive on knowing everything. I need the information. I am that girl who will look up the menu before we go to a new restaurant. I'll see what the parking situation is, so I know where I'm parking. Like, I need to know all of the information, right? And so as a market runner, I will be sending out emails weeks in advance, multiple emails, just being like, hey, just a reminder, this is what's going on. Here's another thing that you can be thinking about, all this stuff, right? If it's a windy market day, if I can see that it's going to be like not the best weather, I'm like, here are ways that you can prep your booth, you know? And so I give too much information probably, but that is my way to approach it. So when you're going into a weekend and you're looking at the weather and it's questionable, you know, and some events are rain or shine. I've had events that the weather did not stop people from coming, which is great. I've had other events that completely flopped because of the weather, which has nothing to do with the quality of the market runner, not at all. But, you know, the runner needs to either make the decision of, no, we're going to keep it, but here are things that you can do to make sure that you are prepared. And as a market runner, I would then be like, hey, just because it's raining doesn't mean that we're not stopping. Y'all should come out, bring your umbrellas, yada, 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 right? Have a good time in the rain, whatever. Sell it, right? Or cancel it. If you planned ahead and you had a rain date, be like, okay, you know, this isn't safe for vendors. This isn't safe for the shoppers. We're going to go ahead and move it, right? And then communicate that.
I feel like people don't realize how important communication is until they don't have it. Until they're dealing with a situation where they are not getting any communication. And that's when they realize, oh, you know what? I actually would prefer the person to bombard me with information, because I know for you, the market that we're not naming names, you didn't get any information.
By the way, what is your TikTok, so everyone could go follow you on TikTok to get all of your grievances?
I am
to get the name of the market.
Yeah, be like, I need some tea. I'm at the Design Demon on all platforms. So the Design Demon,
The Design Demon, perfect.
Because Design Demon was taken. I'm not bitter about it, but you know, that was multiple years ago. We've moved on. It's fine. It was a $200 vendor fee, which is pretty exorbitant, right?
Yeah.
And usually when you're paying that much money, it's A, for the venue, and B, for the quality of service, right, that the market runner is providing for you, right? The venue was Riverfront Park, super expensive to rent out. I have looked into it before. It is pricey. So I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's a festival, $200, like, that's a lot, but you know what? Gotta risk it sometimes, right? So let's do it. Mind you, this was the second year they did it, the first time at Riverfront Park. Last time it was much smaller in scale. And so there was a lot of back and forth in my head. I was just like, screw it, we're going to do it. And then I proceeded to not really hear from them at all. I heard more from their marketing person than the runners themselves, which again is very strange from someone who does markets as frequently as I do. Because I got a text message from their marketing person asking for promo photos and like a bio and stuff, which is like, that part is normal, asking for promo photos and bio. Getting a text message from someone who is not the runner, not normal.
Interesting. And well, when we get offline, I'm going to ask you, I think I know who the marketing person is for this. I have an inkling. So what you're saying is that you just they kind of ghosted people.
Yeah.
And you didn't hear from them until...
Yeah. So I paid my fee in like July, I think the first week of July, and this market was the first week of September. So that's a big space in between, right? And moving into it, I was like, okay, I probably won't hear from them for a little while. I got a notification from the marketing person. I got tagged on posts, like they were relatively active. And then as it got closer to the event, they were not very active on social media. So I was like, did something happen with the marketing person? I don't know. There were other things marketing related that we can get into if y'all want. That was just like, what's going on? Which I don't think was the marketing person's fault. I think it was the event runner's fault. But I digress. Going into the Thursday before, it's going to be a rainy weekend, all of the stuff. I'm like, hey, is it rain or shine? What's going on? What's the load-in time? What's the map? Like, I didn't know literally anything. I just knew that it was at Riverfront Park. And he was just like, oh, we might delay it an hour. Okay.
What
I
does that
have
mean
other
for you as
questions
a
that I
vendor?
asked
Yeah.
you. Yeah. And so, long story short, it gets to 7:00 the night before. I reached out to the marketing person asking for this guy's number because he wasn't emailing me back. He wasn't messaging me back on Instagram. I didn't have any other form of communication with him. So I had to text this random lady, hey, do you have this guy's number? And then I texted him. He proceeds to call me. I am quite the millennial and I don't like answering the phone. And so I was just like, hey, like, can you please just text me or email me? I would really appreciate that. And then all he said was that load-in's at 8:30 tomorrow morning. I'm like, okay.
Let me give you a different perspective on this too, because I know for you, and this is if you guys have never worked an event of any type, so in my big girl job during my day job, we do events. There are different types of events. We're not selling a product, but we still have to be out there in community events. And to your point, actually, we have the Scottish Games. We set up a medical tent over at the Scottish Games every year, and so. For me, I've been doing it so long, it's like clockwork, right? Especially for this particular event. However, maybe a couple years ago, they switched teams as far as the person that was coordinating. And I remember thinking to myself, because the other person wasn't quite as communicative. And so I kind of had to piece things together over the years. This person was spot on. When I tell you, she called me months in advance to be sure that we were on the schedule and that we were good to go. And what it does is having all of the information as far as where the parking's situated, if they're going to give you a parking pass, what is it? What time you need to be there? Can you set up the tents before, like the night before, or is it the day of? How long are you committed to stay? Because for a lot of these events, you can't start packing up early. You got to be there the whole day. And so, these are small questions that you need to be asking up front before you commit to something. She had everything so lined up for me that it helps me recruit volunteers for what I'm doing when I can lay out that information out. And what kind of ticks me off about the story you just told is this. First of all, everybody knows in an event flyer, if you're having an event, you always put whether it's rain or shine. That's just clockwork. You put rain or shine right underneath. Or here's a second day in case it rains, right? It'll be rescheduled. The other thing is, why are you advertising for an event without putting your contact information on it? Like most people are like event organizer, name, cell phone number, email address.
Or at least in the email when you're like, hey, you've been accepted, give me your money, but here's how you can contact me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I also want to say, Ray, you had mentioned, and this is a really big deal, you had mentioned that event goers were commenting on Facebook like, hey, are you still going to have this event? And no one was responding to them. So this is a great example, communication, not just with vendors, but actual event goers. Like they need to know what's going on too. So Ray, I think you had said that you were responding to people.
Yeah. So that was the other
come
bit
buy
of
my
marketing.
jewelry.
I was like, please, it doesn't even. No, I was on my personal Instagram. It was literally, I had so much anxiety, y'all. I was not sleeping. So I was like, gotta scroll through Facebook, I guess. And so I was looking through the comments because I was worried that people weren't going to show up because of the lack of communication. And so I was scrolling through the comments and there were, like Chelsea said, a crap ton of people saying, hey, is this still happening? They had posted to their Instagram stories saying it was rain or shine. Like, here's like a general info thing. But, especially y'all being in the marketing field, right? You have an event on Facebook that for whatever reason, they had two separate Facebook events. I don't get what happened there, whatever. But one event had about 65,000 people.
It's all communication, miscommunication, obviously.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So one of the events had 65,000 people. The other event had 7,000 people. Lots of people, right? And they weren't using that as a way to talk to people, right? their Instagram, I think, just broke 1,000 followers around the time of the event, which, like, you should still post on Instagram and on Instagram stories, but you should still be posting on the event page where you have thousands of people. Yeah. And so when they hadn't done that, and they hadn't even, I don't think they had shared their Instagram stories to their Facebook stories either. I was just like, no one's gonna know. So I went through as many as I could without sounding annoying, and I just took a screenshot from their Instagram story, and I was like, yes, it's still on. Yes, it's still on. And I mean, that was as much as I could do without being weird about it, I guess.
It always strikes me, the marketing person in me is very aggravated by this whole situation simply because of one reason. An event that size, anytime you're doing a community event and there's a change of schedule or something, send it into the news stations. You know this, Ray, like Live 5 News, ABC News 4, WCBD Channel 2. Those people would have gladly like posted on their Facebook, right? Because it's a community event that lots of people were planning on going to. They would have gladly posted on behalf of the organization just to blast it out there and let people know, hey, if you're considering going to X, Y, and Z festival, it's rain or shine, right?
Yep.
So it irks me that they didn't capitalize on trying to get the word out there. And then also there's such thing as training your audience as far as communication is concerned. And so for those of you out there, if you have not participated in an event, but you're considering it, I urge you, go onto Facebook, go onto Instagram, go to google.com, type in the name of the event and see what populates for it from past either events, look for photos, look for any posts they have made or just communication, because I think that's going to be a good indication of the type of experience you might be up for as a vendor.
And I think that's real quick, I think that's a really big one when it comes to how they promote the event.
Yeah.
Because like Ray said, okay, this event had 2 separate Facebook event pages. They had an Instagram. They were kind of posting on Instagram. They weren't doing anything on their Facebook pages. Like, that is a telltale sign that as a vendor, you might not do great at this event because they're not telling anyone it's there.
Yeah, or at least this, I will say this, because kind of like what we talked about with your situation now with the feminist magic market, now that you are, it's quote unquote under new management. Okay. So now that Ray is responsible for everything, for coordinating all of it, I think you also have opportunities throughout the year where if it does change hands, or maybe they get a new marketing team or they get a new person to help, there can be improvements made, right, over the years. So, but at least I think as a person that would be participating, you'd say it doesn't seem like they communicate well. So one of the questions that I'm going to ask them up front is, what do you plan to do to promote this event? What do you plan to do for it? And then that's going to dictate, their response is going to dictate whether or not I feel comfortable dropping $200 on a vendor fee to participate. And at least then at that point, it's, it was a decision I made fully on my own with all of the right information that I had.
I think asking these questions up front, how they respond is also a really big deal, because let's say they don't know. If they just tell you, I don't know, that says a lot. But if they say, oh, well, we're still figuring it out, working on it, but as soon as I get more information, I'll let you know. That says a lot more about who they are than just saying, I don't know.
Are you a small business owner feeling overwhelmed by marketing? We understand. That's why we created the S.O.B community just for you. Imagine having access to expert marketing advice every week through our interactive Zoom calls. Network with fellow small business owners in our community, share valuable insights, and grow together. Dive into our comprehensive training videos covering everything from social media to SEO. And all this for just $50 a month. Empower your small business without breaking the bank. Join the S.O.B community today.
I will say, on a similar, somewhat tangential note, good branding can be an easy way to fool people, right? Especially nowadays where you have, really solid Canva templates to work off of that look 100% professional, beautiful, marketing, all that stuff. Just because it looks good does not mean that the quality is there from the back end. And especially with this, they had solid branding. I was like, whoever did your designing, like, good on them, right? And so they had solid branding. They had the following they did on the Facebook events. And so for me, I was just like, oh, they know what they're doing, And so maybe this goes into how good branding can be, of how it can easily trick you. but no,
it can be
have
used
gone
for
to
evil. Yes.
But I've even gone to even smaller, $30 vendor fee markets where I was just like, their poster looks really good. They're sharing a lot. And I mean, that's not their fault, right? They're doing what they can at that, right? They have solid marketing, solid communication, sharing their vendors, yada, yada, yada. Just people don't always come out to those kind of things, right? So, but sometimes it is just hey, we made a really cool poster, you should come out, and then it's a crappy market for the vendors, so.
All right. So to switch the conversation up, I'm kind of curious because I know, Chelsea, you say this often. Chelsea will remind us very quickly that just because an event is popular does not mean that's going to be the right event for you.
Yes.
Right, Chelsea? All right. So I know talk to me about it from two angles. The first one being the angle that the event you just participated in that didn't, they weren't as communicative, all of that stuff. Was the audience the right target audience for you for the design demon or no?
Yes and no. I had a lot of people who were like, wow, this is really great stuff. Gave me a lot of compliments, which I will always reel those in. Please compliment me. No, but
do you have a little compliment box like on your display? Like leave the compliments in there.
You don't have to put any tips, just talk. No, so like there were definitely people there who enjoyed my stuff, whether it meant purchasing it or just looking at it, which is definitely something there. But I did have a lot of negative experiences too. At one point, I had a woman who literally, and if you're listening, you need to go onto YouTube and watch because I'm about to make a facial expression. She was like maybe like 5 feet outside of my vendor booth, and she sees like my nicer stuff, mind you. But she sees it and she goes and walks off. And I'm just like, what? What am I supposed to do? Like, are you responding to my name? Are you responding to my product? What is that a response to? It's obviously something you're looking at that's in my booth, but like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, go on. Please continue down your path. I did not need that. I gave her a stank face right back. So I was just like, no.
Was your husband with you?
No.
I was gonna say maybe it was him. She's like,
oh no. Like, ugh, that beast now.
Well, I'm messing. Well, it's interesting because I think that's so then talk to me from the angle of the owner and the event organizer now of the Feminist Magic Market. How do you, as an event organizer, do you provide that information up front to potential vendors about who the target audience is? Or do they ask you, is there any type of question that they can ask you to make sure that it's the right fit for them? Or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I've never had that question before. I'd be happy to answer it. Usually we see a lot of millennial to elder zillennial, I guess, women who are more of dog moms than they are child moms. But we do see a lot of actual mothers walking around. We do see men. We do see people from the LGBTQ community. That is generally our target audience / the people who just come naturally. But I don't have anything online that says that. Maybe I should. But if anyone asked me, that's what I would say. Here's a good example. We've had a couple of people who are like leather goods people and specifically like men's leather goods. And I don't think they do well because the majority of our shoppers are about 30-year-old women. So unless they have more of a menswear aesthetic or they're shopping for someone else in their life, they're probably not going to shop at your booth. That would be how I answer it. But to get a better idea as to how people do, at the end of every market, I started sending out a feedback form, and it can be completely anonymous if they choose for it to be. I kind of want it to be as anonymous as possible so that they'll give me their honest feedback. But sometimes people will be like, this is who it was. Thank you. Love you. Bye. And I'm like, okay, thank you. But I'll be like, what vendor category are you under? What part of the event were you set up at? Because I also want to figure out how foot traffic is working. How was the load-in process for you? How was your sales day for you? Was it what you were expecting? Was it not what you were expecting? Are you happy about that? So I give them kind of the opportunity to voice like, hey, you should make these changes. And I have here and there been able to actually turn that into a change. Some of the changes are definitely things that need to happen. I just need to figure out how to logistically make it work.
Yeah.
But I never want to make, especially when it has so many people involved, I never want to make an event be like, no, that's as good as it's gonna get. You're welcome to be setting up at Feminist Magic. Like, that's not how I want it. I want it to be like, thank you for choosing us to market yourself. Why did you choose us? How did it go for you? And are you going to be back?
I see a lot of, and I'm not just saying this because you're our friend. This is a real life compliment on a couple different things. The first one is what I absolutely love about the Feminist Magic Market is that you have figured out a way to kind of get people to promote the market, right, alongside with you. So I know you do promoting. You were talking about earlier, I think you're doing some promoting right now on Facebook to be sure you get enough people there for the next one. But which all the vendors, I mean, that as a vendor, that's what people want, right? Like, hey, be sure that I'm aligned with an event that's going to make sure to drive the people there for us. And then the other thing, though, is you have that nice big arch that is a beautiful photo op for people. Chelsea and I have taken a picture of it before, and I think it just helps because then year to year you have this accumulation of people that are taking a picture next to this thing that says very big letters, Feminist Magic Market, right? And it's kind of like when you go out there, I think Chelsea had gone to one or two before I went to one. I was like, I need to get a photo op. Like when we go out there, we need a picture by the little arch. So it's a thing where it's just a thing now for people. So I love that you do that. And then the other one is just that I feel like experience-wise, it's definitely one of the nicer markets to go to because you have such an array of different vendors. I love seeing that plant truck out there, the school bus that's like a plant seller. Love it. I love that we could get all the jewelry. I love that. I know we met a new vendor last year, Chelsea. She was I think a consignment shop. So she had some clothes, shoes. Chelsea had bought some shoes, pottery.
The leopard lady.
Yeah, the leopard lady.
Yeah, that was one of our scholarship booths too. So
awesome.
She applies.
Okay, so tell us about the scholarship booth.
Yeah. So really quick before we get further, the portal, the magical archway, if you will, that is made by Sawdust and Sweetgrass. If anyone who's listening wants a rental for an event or just like something fun, hit them up. I also can't take credit for it because that was the previous organizer. She worked with Holly from Sawdust and Sweetgrass to make that happen. So I can't take credit for it, but I do agree it is very nice to have it there. And we will continue having it there. Anyway, so the scholarship booth, we, like I said earlier, we used to have folks set up in the backyard. And then as we grew, we still had backyard spaces, but they were table spaces. So they were smaller in footprint. So therefore they were cheaper. It was more affordable for people who are, still getting into the market scene, because I think at the time we were doing, I think our tent spaces were like $60, and then our table spaces were 35 or 40, something like that. Which the 35, 40 is already kind of in the higher range as far as like just normal pop-up markets are concerned. 60 and above is definitely higher up, and we recognize that. And so that was just more of a way for smaller businesses who don't really know how they're going to do all that stuff, how they can get their foot in the door, right? But with the feedback forms, we were seeing that people weren't getting a lot of foot traffic back there. And so we were like, while I like having the space for them and like the option to have a cheaper booth space for them, they're still not making money. And I don't want to be like, yeah, apply to our table spaces, even though you might not make as much money as you're hoping, you know, like that's kind of crappy too, if you know they're not going to be making a lot of money. So I was like, we're going to nix having vendors back there. We're going to turn it into the give back garden. So we can still have people back there. We can still entice people to go through the magic portal. And that's where our restrooms are back there as well. So it already has kind of a natural flow. But now we can have nonprofits out there. So they're not paying anything to be there. And more people are inclined to go back there just to kind of hang out and see what's going on. Right. And then I was like, but we still don't have the option for the actual small businesses who want a way to vend, but can't necessarily pay the $70 vendor fee that we're at now, right? And so that's where scholarship booths came into play. Unfortunately, with all the transitioning going on behind the scenes, we weren't able to do it for the September market, but we were able to do it for March and June, and then I'm going to be bringing it back in November. That is like a fully free space. They just have to set it up themselves. I can't like I have a tiny car, so I can't bring like a tent and stuff for them. But that is what the scholarship booth is.
And so they would have to apply for it. Is that correct? Like you take a max number of people for that?
Yeah. So I was trying to figure out the best way to do it because I didn't want, I'll just use myself as an example, right? I've been doing markets for 3 years now. I don't need a scholarship booth. I'd like to save money on a vendor fee. And so if I'm really wanting to, test the waters, I could apply for it, right?
Right.
And so within kind of the parameters of, do you qualify for a scholarship booth? And it has to be one of your first 3 markets in the Low Country. Well, ever, not just the Low Country, because again, I could be applying from Savannah with the same resume, right? So yeah, so that was what it was. It was newcomers to the market scene, as well as they have to be newcomers, as well as like still have a solid business plan, right? Like we don't want basically a bake sale situation, right? We don't want, I make cookies from the Toll House cookie jar and here you go, like it still has to be relatively viable. So we still treat it like, I still treat it like a normal application in that regard, but it is less of a, okay, how does this compare to, Nancy who has the plant bus or the design even, like I don't have that much of a thought process as far as like, oh, like how are they going to compare with them? Because they're there for free. They can kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work.
So Ray, I want to ask you, what advice do you have for vendors who are unsure about a specific market? They've never done it before. They're trying to pick what works best for their small business. What advice do you have?
We've talked about it a lot, right? Marketing really does matter. If you're looking at a big event, or maybe not even that big of an event, just like a local pop-up, right? If they're not constantly sharing like what vendors are going to be there, I feel like that's a red flag. I would also kind of, again, if it's a local market especially, go visit it first before you apply and be like, oh, like what's the foot traffic like? What's the general audience like? What are the other vendors doing? And even if it's kind of slower, take a second and be friendly, network. I hate networking, but network with the vendor and be like, hey, like I also have a business. What do you think of this market? Like if they're friendly enough. Some vendors don't want to talk about that, which is fine. I'm not that type of person. I will yap my butt off. But yeah, so just experience it, I think is really important. If you're unable to experience it, say it's something that's only an annual event, right? Especially now that we're going into the holiday season, you only have like Christmas events that happen once a year, right? look at the past year's events, see what vendors were attending, whether it means people who were tagging the market that had shared, all that kind of stuff. And if you know them personally, reach out. If you don't know them personally, follow them for a little while, see kind of what their vibe is, and if they seem open, if you think they'll be open to sharing more on a less, base, right? Like if you're a business and you're doing a character, right? Like a persona. There we go. That's the word. If you're doing a persona. I don't do that because I don't know how to do that. But some people are a little more fake, for lack of a better term, than others. So if they feel like, you can either crack through that facade, or they are more of a realistic type of person, reach out to them. Yeah, I think it really is just a matter of Googling it, looking at what people have tagged it with, talking and networking with the other vendors that are there, going and experiencing it is very big for me. But and you could do all of those things. It could still be a crappy event for you, which is fine. That is kind of the name of the game, is that not every single thing works for every single person's business. There's a local market that happens in Johns Island that a lot of my friends love it. And I've done it and I've never done well at it, which is fine. It's either it's not my clientele, or it's not what people want to see over there. I don't know, but I have accepted that. And I think other people are like, well, why can't I make it work over here? It's just like, it's not your thing, boo boo. It's okay. You're winter and you're trying to wear fall colors. Like, I don't know. It's okay.
I want to say social media is a really powerful tool, y'all. So if something went wrong at a market, you will find information on it. I promise you. I'm thinking of, was it Riverfront Revival? It wasn't a market. It was a music festival.
Yeah.
And I barely heard anything about this because it's not my jam. It's not my kind of music. So I wasn't following it. And I still managed to get so much information about how bad the parking was. And about how bad the entire experience of trying to get in and out was.
I think it was Highwater, wasn't it?
Was it Highwater? That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was Highwater. Again, not my kind of music, not my vibe. So I wasn't even looking for this information. And I still managed to learn that, not well planned out in that sense. So I think if you are specifically looking for information, you will find it.
Absolutely. And again, it depends on the size of it, right? Like, I have, as I have mentioned, I have an ego. And so I Google feminist magic as much as I can. Like, it's a daily task for me. And so I'm like, what are people saying about me? Like that is the vibe behind it, right? But I go on Reddit, I go on YouTube, I look at the hashtag on Instagram and TikTok, okay, maybe not every day. That does sound a little insane. Not that crazy. But
tip here, actually do a Google alert for it. Is that what you were about to say, Chelsea?
That was what I was about to say. I was about to say, you need to set up a Google alert. Great minds think alike.
Yeah,
look at us.
You could do a couple different ones for it. And then that way it pings your phone. I do this for, I've been doing it for years on my big girl job, because sometimes they'll write articles about us without really coming through the approval process. So I set it up a long time ago, and sure enough, it'll get pinged every once in a while whenever something pops up. I still think Googling on your own helps. So you still want to do that intermittently, but in the meantime, it's a good way to kind of keep a pulse on it. Yeah. I think the other part of it too is, Ray, at some point, as a small business owner, I'd imagine that you would recommend that people know their numbers really well before they decide to participate in any event. Because at that point, and regardless of whether it goes well or it doesn't go as well as you want it to, for me, and this is going to sound a little weird, y'all, but best advice I ever got in college was from a personal selling professor that told us that a lot of people, the roadblock people have with selling in general, is that they don't play out the worst case scenario. He's because they're not prepared. So I got in the habit ever since then of playing out the worst case scenario for anything that I get nervous or anxious about. Sorry, there's a fly in here. And so what it does is it allows me to say, well, even if I make 0 sales at that market, I'm only out, let's say $200, or I'm out $150 or whatever that is. Am I willing to take that, plunge and eat that cost worst case? I probably will make at least a couple sales. So it might not be that bad, but I think knowing your numbers just helps with being able to decide if you're willing to take on that risk of whatever event you're going to participate in.
And knowing your numbers is going to let you know if it was a good or bad event.
Yeah.
Because just because you sold some stuff doesn't mean that it was a good event. Like, you need parameters to be able to say, yes, this event went well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the event that I've been complaining about this whole time, but that event, I profited at it. I have a certain sales goal for hourly in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't reach that, but I still profited, right?
Well, good for you. Yeah.
But I'll never do it again. It still wasn't worth it for me, right? And other people have different perspectives on that, which is totally valid. I think there's a vendor Facebook page that, or Facebook group that a lot of us are in, and someone had asked, basically that question of what makes an event worth it for you. And someone said that, if the event fee is 4 times my lowest priced product, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, I don't know where that number comes from, but your stuff for yourself, I guess. So if it's not worth it, then it's not worth it. My lowest price thing is $3. So I can't.
You're not able to do any vendor.
Yeah.
It needs to be free, I guess. But also the amount of risk that people can take on differ from person to person, right? So here's the thing is I was going to say I probably take on less risk than Chelsea, but I think it's the opposite. I would be more prone to take on more risk than Chelsea, even though she's the one that everyone would assume, I
think a good example of this, and this is not business related, but a good example is Vivian and I had a conversation about casinos because Tim loves casinos. Tim loves to go gambling. That's why he loves going on cruises, because that's what he does all day, is just spends his time in the casino. I'm out doing cool stuff. He can do whatever. But Vivian was saying, well, you have to go in and you have to have a set amount of money that you're willing to lose. Yes, that is correct. I understand that. The problem is the set amount of money that I'm willing to lose is $0. I wanted to say thank you, Ray, for bringing up the point that monetary value does not necessarily mean you had a successful event. As you said, you profited. You were still not going back to that market. We had a similar conversation with Jessie from Southern Curiosities when she was on the podcast. She had said, sometimes I don't
Which, by the way, I don't know if she goes by Jessica or Jessie, but you just made her one of your BFFs by calling her Jessie.
Oops.
So Jessie,
I've decided
Jessica,
we're besties.
Jessie, you're now besties.
Yeah, okay. Jessica or Jessie. I think I saw it in a reel. I think I saw her
She probably does go by Jessie.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'm lame and I say everyone's full name once I realize it, and then they need to correct me. So I'm like, yeah, it's Jessica.
Okay. Southern Curiosities. We had a conversation with her, and she had said, I might not meet my monetary goal, but I still had really great conversations with potential customers, and I still had really great conversations with vendors. So I still consider that market a success, even if I didn't meet, the monetary value that I wanted to meet. That doesn't mean the entire day was a bust.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I had a separate event over this past weekend that I have the exact same opinion on it. I profited. I didn't profit as much as I would have wanted to, but I still enjoyed myself. I still enjoyed the people I met, got to hang out with, all that stuff. So I would still do it again in the future. It really is kind of a balance of quality of life with markets as well.
Mm-hmm. To that conversation, though, about quality of life, one of the things, and you probably, Ray, have seen this quite a bit this year, there have been a lot of vendors, because we live in the South and it's super hot, that basically just opted out of not doing summer events, because they were like, I cannot make enough money to get me out in this heat to a point where I'm practically like passing out from the heat, right?
Yeah. I was one of those vendors who I was just like, the June Feminist Magic, the Pride Feminist Magic. I'm like, I'm done. I'll be back when it's sub 90 degrees, please.
Well, I think this conversation has been super valuable, and we definitely want to encourage all of you out there. If you are in the South Carolina region, even if you're in the Southeast, and you want to go and look up the Feminist Magic Market that takes place in Park Circle, North Charleston, South Carolina, then please do so. Ray is the event organizer for that, and I'm sure she would be willing to answer any questions you guys have. But also, if you are just someone that lives around here in South Carolina, please come out to the next one. It is just such a good time, and you could get a lot of shopping done, I promise you.
Oh, yeah. We have a lot of eating. We have a lot of good food trucks.
Yes.
It's very important to me.
Are you guys having the Korean corn dog?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh, those look so good. Chelsea, did you have one last time?
I did. I had one and it was amazing.
I'm
I've been
jealous.
thinking about it this entire time. Because when's the next market?
It's September 28th, so it's a week and a half.
Yep, a week and a half. Okay, from this recording. So
Yes, from this recording. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. But I am going to get one on the 28th.
Right.
I've been thinking about it this entire time.
You know what I found was interesting? I think I saw that she is doing classes where you can make your own or something like that. I could have swore I saw something on Facebook where you could get a group of people together and like, I don't know, she would teach you how to make them or something.
Yeah, I did see this. Yeah. Which is brilliant. Like, okay,
yes,
please. Thank you.
I know. When you talk about like a business model, I just love when people get creative and you're like, oh, I never would have thought about that. That is so cool.
Yeah.
So, Ray, tell us, where can we find out more about the Feminist Magic Market?
So Feminist Magic Market, we have a new website, is feministmagicmarketchs.com. There's an email subscriber link at the bottom, and I am going to be utilizing my email marketing in an annoying amount of time. No, you won't get bombarded, but I will be sharing all of the updates as far as when application windows are open, market news. Sometimes I'll do some vendor spotlights, all that fun stuff. And then on there, we will have our Instagram and Facebook listed, because a little bit of tea, I'm going to have to be changing the name, the handles.
Well, thank you again, Ray, for coming on here and having this discussion with us. And you guys, if you haven't listened to her other episode that she guest stars on, I will link to it in the show notes and on the YouTube video. So go check it out and go be the best SOB you can be.